got your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Jody McDonald and John McMullen. Mike Zielski, lead columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer, is going to jump in with us in less than 20 minutes now. We haven't had Mike on since the Super Bowl. A bunch of very good columns that he wrote. Want to expand on that when we get Mr. Zielski up here in about 20 minutes. Another announcement that we need to make here on Birds 365. We told you, like, share, subscribe, please. Do us a solid, make us look good with our bosses. Hit that like button before you get out of here today. Speaking of the bosses, apparently we're going to do a little load management here on Birds 365. To surprise of both John and myself, next week, Birds 365 will be on hiatus for a week. We are getting a week off, which we haven't had since we started this bad boy. 2 Aprils ago, John. We've been doing this for about 22
what
months.
Number?
Are we
what,
not?
What number are we at? I always got to check
today would be show number 472. We're sneaking up on 500, buddy.
Yeah,
getting
a lot
damn
of
close
shows.
to 500.
A lot of shows.
So the powers that be decided, maybe less is more. We've been running these guys ragged for sneaking up on 2 years come April 1st. Why don't we throw them a bone and give them a week off? So yes, Birds 365 will be on hiatus next week. We're not going away. We're just taking some downtime. It's like the modern sporting world. Less is more.
Yes,
ask Brandon Graham. Less is more. He has maybe the best season of his career ever because he didn't have to play as much as he used to. So, yes, McMullen and McDonald are getting a week off next week. So that means you got to be here every single day this week because what are you going to do without us next week? You're going to be pulling your hair out. You'll end up looking like John and myself, and that's not what you want to do. So make sure you're here for the next couple of days because we will be off next week here on Birds 365. But then we'll be back leading into free agency, leading into the draft. We got tons of stuff we can do for the next couple of weeks. All right, I want to ask you about a free agent who is almost never brought up when we talk about the Eagle free agents and who they're going to have to try and really get re-signed and who they're probably going to let walk away because we think the price tag is going to be too much. And, oh, by the way, we don't get all these right. We get most of them right, but I know over the years I've gotten some. No way they're bringing this guy back. Oh, he comes back. Oh, they're guaranteed to get this guy signed. Oh, he goes somewhere else. So we can have our predictions and projections, and the only one who knows for sure is Howie Roseman. But a guy that we almost never reference is one of John McMullen's favorites, and that would be the backup left tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles, who has kind of snuck up on free agency. And I give him credit in that when he needed to be plugged in this year, when Mailata was out, he did a decent job. There's a drop-off. Anybody from Mailata would be a drop-off, but there was a drop-off, but it wasn't near as significant as I thought it might be. Andre Dillard, is he going to get a starting job somewhere else in the National Football League?
I think so. Boy, there's so many bad offensive lines. I mean, you go back to the days of Halapula Bati did a tremendous job in 2017 when Jason Peters got hurt, but he had, a lot of limitations, and he got a big contract from Detroit. I don't even want to go because Isaac is a really good player, Isaac Sayamalo. Now, I think because of the injury a couple of years ago, the Liz Frank injury, which is really significant, that might tamper him down a little bit. Plus, guards don't make as much as tackles, but I still think he's getting a big deal. I'm not sure what the deal is going to be. Probably not what Andre would like as far as numbers, but he's going to be a starting left tackle in this league somewhere next year. I'm very comfortable saying that. And then it's up to him. Obviously, he could fall on his face and not perform well and get benched, but somebody's going to give him the opportunity to be the starting left tackle. By that I mean they're going to sign him to say this is our left tackle. He's talented, and I know it didn't work out here. And he had some ups and downs. When he tried to play right tackle, it was a disaster. And I know a lot of people wrote him off from that standpoint. Jordan Mailata is just, that was, how could you predict that coming? I mean, that's one of those where talk about once in a lifetime. That's literally once in a lifetime. And he happened to lap him, and they happened to find a better left tackle. The Eagles think he can play. They think he's a good player. They can't keep him because you can't, you're not going to be able to keep a backup left tackle who should be a starter in this league. And for two reasons. One, Andre wants to go be a starter. And two, somebody's going to pay him thinking, all right, we're going to get a really good deal because left tackles is one of the premium positions still in the NFL.
Typically expensive, right?
Yeah, typically it's very expensive. So you're going to get a bargain and you're going to get a potentially really good left tackle. We'll see if that back end turns out to be true, but larger point from an Eagles perspective, even if they wanted to keep him, they couldn't keep him. So, I always talk about the guarantees, who's not going to be here. I'm mainly talking about the starters, and I would say Miles and James Bradbury because of the money in Bradbury's case. Andre's even more a fait accompli. He's not coming back. I mean, he's just not.
And I got nothing against Kid, and if he can play when he goes somewhere else and he gets continuous reps as a starter, he turns into a pretty damn good player. I give him all the props in the world. He should be a starter as a first-round draft pick in the NFL. We'll see if he can reach that level. My question was always, and you're there every single day, I'm not. You get a chance to talk to the coaches more than I do. But information does come out. Shoot, Jason Kelce goes on the record and says – Suopeta is the Tesla stock of NFL offensive linemen. Jason Kelce never said that about Andre Dillard. Jeff Stoutland gets his information out there. Not always on the record, not always with quotes around it, but you find out information as to what Jeff Stoutland thinks about an offensive player. He never said anything bad about Andre Dillard, but nor has he ever leaked out that the only reason that this guy's not playing is because he's behind Mailata. So that's the only reason why I'm not as sure that he's going to become as good a player. You just look at his stats, his rankings, PFF, when he does get a chance to play. They're good. They're solid. And nothing spectacular. Not jumping off the page. The Eagles made, which I think was a mistake, trying to move him to the right-hand side. Some guys just can't do that. Some guys just can't make that transition to go from one side to the other, and even more so to go from inside to outside. And they've tried to do it a couple of different times in a couple of different places with Dillard, and it really hasn't worked out. You got to be honest about that. He's not really a guard, and he's much more well-suited for the left side than he is the right side. His flexibility isn't great, but if he's going to go somewhere else and he's just going to be the left tackle, we'll find out how good he is.
Yeah, we will. I mean, as I said, that point, at that point, it's up to him. I do, hesitate. You're right. I don't think I've ever heard Jason Kelce talk about Andre Dillard, and a lot of times when you ask, Jason, it's usually interior guys because he works with the interior guys. Doesn't have as much.
But did they not give Dillard some snaps interior this year?
Well, they did. That's the point I was about to bring up.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Left guard, he played left guard this season. It's the reason the Tesla stock got cut and put on the practice squad because Andre proved he could handle left guard. So I think that was a positive. There's no doubt that the team was upset when he sort of gave up, to be honest, at right tackle. He didn't like doing it. He didn't want to do it. He didn't fight through some of the issues. They were upset about that. No doubt about it. Legitimate criticism. But they never wavered, and Stoutland particularly, never wavered about him being a good left tackle. I reverse back. We were doing the show. Remember, now it's kind of lost in history because Mailata's turned into Mailata. But, that year they came into training camp even. Andre got every deference. practice 1, Andre Dillard. Wasn't Mailata day 2. They rotated every day, every single day. And it was Dillard, always number 1 until he got hurt. And then Mailata just kind of took off. They thought Andre Dillard was going to be the starting left tackle. They like him as a player. And then Jordan just, took off like a rocket. But they've never wavered at left tackle. They had some issues about, maybe there was some upset. There was that photo the Inquirer got about him sort of tearing up a little bit after a fight, and that goes over well in Philadelphia, obviously. Not tough enough, blah, blah, blah. So there were all these other things. But Stoutland specifically never wavered. This guy's got a lot of talent. And we'll see if he can live up to it. It's not going to be here.
Yeah, he's probably going to be elsewhere, and we'll find out how good a player he is. But I felt the need because you see the list of all the Eagles free agents, and we talk about the guys who are in there who are playing, and you're going to have to replace immediately in the starting lineup. Dillard was a first-round draft pick who, when he walks away, and you can say this is right, wrong, or indifferent, how you evaluate, that's going to be a miss on Howie Roseman's record as well. That you use a first-round draft pick on a guy who basically never became a starter for your team. Now, it balances out because Mailata's Mailata, and he's Pro Bowl, and he's all pro level, and you took him in the 7th round. So you can afford to swing and a miss on a first-rounder as long as you have the backup 7th rounder who reaches the heights that
that's an interesting, that's an interesting story, Jody. One of the issues that maybe Howie learned from, I think Dillard was 22nd pick, somewhere around there,
right?
Somewhere in the early 20s. He was not supposed to be at 22. The Eagles didn't do a ton of homework on him because they didn't think there was any chance that he would be there. This is a guy who was borderline top 10 pick when you saw some of the pre-draft hype and all that stuff. And all of a sudden he starts falling. And the Eagles didn't do a lot of pre-draft prep on him. And they said, well, we got to take this kid. He's so talented. And they took him, and it didn't work out. Maybe they learned a little bit something from that. And who knows why Bell? Maybe some people figured that out. Maybe some people said,
right, John, and I'm not doubting you at all. But if what you're saying is right, then shame on the Philadelphia Eagles. It wasn't like Andre.
Well, yeah, I said maybe they learned from
5
that
pick. Like, oh my God, we've got him number 3 on our board. He's there at 22. We could potentially take him at 22. Then shame on them. How did they just blow off the first 3 players in there on their draft board? Because we got no chance to get these guys. No, you have to do your homework on all of them. Even number 1, if you're sitting at 22.
There's that's kind of a misnomer. I mean, there are guys, when you pick somewhere, you're not going to be involved with. So you don't do a lot of homework. And, that's just the reality of the situation. In this instance, I'm not saying they did no homework because they drafted him, and Stoutland was, very complimentary of him when he got drafted, especially his pass blocking. Very, very complimentary. So it's not like, but they did not think they had any chance at him at 22. And it's not like, you could boil it down. If you're picking Jalen Reagor, what did he I think he went 21 somewhere. I think he was 21. You can boil it down to know, all right, well, we're not getting so-and-so, so we got to boil it down to this level. And that's what the Eagles did. They did not think they were getting that player. And maybe they learned something from that. Maybe that's a positive.
Hopefully they did, because I remember that draft, and it wasn't like Andre Dillard was going to be in the top 5. It was
not top 5, but he was borderline top 10 the conversation. And it was a surprise. Go back, Jody. It was a surprise he fell.
Yeah, I do not remember him being in anybody's mock top 10. Top 20, yes. He fell a little bit. I will certainly acknowledge that. you got to have a bigger spread than that if you're sitting at number 22. And oh, by the way, you're telling me the Eagles might look to jump up and get higher to number 10 this year. I don't remember all the picks that they didn't have that season off the top of my head, but if you really like them that much, you could have moved up and gotten them. And good thing you didn't. That you got them at 22 if you think that was a value there. But I'm not buying that.
Well, and by the way, now I'm remembering Houston was at 23. Houston was counting on getting Andre Dillard as he continued to ball. And talk about panic. The Eagles took him at 22. And then Houston picked Titus Howard, which was a big reach because they needed a left tackle. And, they're not the only ones who aren't prepared at times. Everybody has them. But, I look at some of the players afterwards. The one guy I see, not a lot of great misses. I mean, Josh Jacobs, obviously a very good player, but they're not taking a running back. Hollywood Brown. Montez Sweat, now that's a guy who's a really good player. Jonathan Abram, I remember the Eagles had interest in at the time. Luckily, they didn't take him. Jerry Tillery, who I admit I thought was going to be a good player, and I was woefully wrong. LJ Collar, not good. DeAndre Baker, we know what happened to him. And Keel Harry. I mean, that bottom of that first round of that draft, not good.
Special. Yeah, nothing special coming out other than Montez Sweat. Nothing special coming out of the second
Jacobs is really good, but the Eagles aren't taking a running back.
They had no chance at taking a running back. All right, one other thing before we get Mike up, because I want to ask Mike about this, and shame on me I didn't ask Ed this. Eagles replacing their defensive coordinator. Sean Desai is a guy who they've asked permission to bring in. Formerly with the Bears under Vic Fangio, was the DC the last year before Nagy got fired, and then a new coaching staff comes in. A defensive head coach is going to come in and make changes. So he ends up going to Seattle for 1 year. That Seattle defense was pretty good. He was an associate head coach. We know he's immersed in the type of defense that the Eagles played under Jonathan Gannon. What of your sources, if you've done any research, talked to anybody about it, how well is this guy respected around the league? Will he be a good fit and a good hire if the Eagles decide to go that way?
Yeah, I think he would be. In fact, I mean, if it were between Sean Desai and Denard Wilson, I'd probably lean towards Sean Desai because of his history. You mentioned defensive coordinator, Chicago, associate head coach. He got the job in Seattle. So, when Pete Carroll, puts that stamp on you, that's pretty impressive as well. He's even got a little Temple. He was a coach at Temple early in his career. I think that was his first job. So, he knows the area a little bit, was there for 4 or 5 years, something like that. But yeah, he's a big Fangio guy, and that's what you want to play. So, Denard Wilson wasn't. Denard Wilson was one of those outliers of sort of, all right, we talked about it a little bit with Jamal Singleton. Same thing with secondary coach. The Eagles didn't have one guy in place, and they kept looking and looking and looking. They got Denard Wilson, who's been a very good coach, very good secondary. But
I like the moves with the Jets. That's why I'm kind of rooting for him.
For what they want to run, if they want to continue to run, and Nick said there's certain principles that I like, and he said in the past, I like this defense from an offensive perspective. This is difficult to deal with. Well, then I want the guys been doing it. So from that standpoint, but again, when you talk about coaching, I don't know. I'll freely admit, I have no idea. But his history and the people who like him, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it does sound a little impressive. That is just one of the many questions we're going to put to our next guest, Mike Silsky, lead sports inquirer, sports columnist for the Inquirer, going to jump on with us next. So stay right here with